1, episode 1. I am very excited, but I'm a little bit nervous, but mostly excited. So, babe, you and I finally get to do a podcast together. I'm Danae, and I'm your host for Love Thy Number.
And I'm Doug, and I got to tell you, I am so excited this day has finally come. You have been talking to me about the Enneagram for the last 10 years, and slowly but surely, you have shown me the way.
Some people are very slow learners.
Some are, but the important thing is that eventually you do learn. And really and truly, I am so glad you are finally sharing this with other people. As much as I have had an opportunity to see the meaning of it in our conversations, this is great. I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you. Me too.
So here we are, and it's Love Thy Number. Maybe it'd be a good idea to start with where you came up with that idea.
Well, thank you for asking. So Love Thy Number, this podcast is going to be an Enneagram-centered conversation. And what we're going to try to do is focus on the strengths of each of our numbers. We're very good about focusing on our shadow selves and our things that we need to improve. But I just thought, what if we changed the story and started talking about our strengths? And so you and I both grew up in a religious family. We have a religious background. We don't really refer to that anymore. We talk more in terms of spirituality. But when we did grow up, we were very familiar, as most people probably are, even if you're not religious, with the phrase, love thy neighbor as thyself. But it seems to me that what we really focused on the most was we needed to love our neighbor. And I think it's impossible to love another one if we don't know how to love ourselves, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that's the basis. We just kind of did an Enneagram twist on it. Instead of love thy neighbor, it's love thy number. So we're going to focus on learning to love ourselves. But this is really not a spiritual podcast. It's a relationship podcast. So we've had a long history of talking over some really in-depth, important tools that we use. Like some of what we focus on a lot is something called spiral dynamics.
Yep.
Why don't you explain that?
Well, we'll go into that a little bit more another time just to tie it in to the Enneagram to see how both of these tools are different, and yet both of them are necessary to have what we might call an integrated life, or another word might be a whole life.
Right.
There's a whole lot of different models that we use in life, and that's the whole reason that you attracted me to this one. We have sat down and had conversations about our perspectives of the same life condition, but because we come from a different orientation, a different perspective, you and I, as much as we've loved each other and respected each other and worked together and so on and so forth, I have learned so much about having a much better marriage relationship. And it's also helped me in terms of the kids. So whether it's spiral dynamics, or whether you're a person who likes to read the Tao, or perhaps some of the Eastern writings that pertain to Buddhism or Hinduism, those kinds of things, there are a number of different ways that we can enrich and enhance our relationships. And we are going to pull from all of them.
That's right.
As we go along.
Yeah, we may quote the Bible sometime.
Yep.
We may quote Eckhart Tolle or Brené Brown or the Tao, but each of these are tools. They're not the be-all, end-all. I can't say that. Be-all, end-all themselves, but we use the layers. We think these just layer beautifully together. And so, babe, you are an Enneagram 9.
So I've been told.
So the test told you.
Yeah.
No. Much study and research is really what told us. The test was just the beginning.
That's right. And one of the things that I learned about the 9 right away, and you're going to go through this as you go along in the podcast, because you explained to me that there's an entry-level knowledge of what a number can mean, and then there's a lot of complexity that's a drill down, so to speak, within that. But the initial thing I learned today was that 9 was most commonly referred to as the peacemaker. And it's someone who is seeking both internal peace for themselves, but also really genuinely interested in peace between other people, peace among other people. And so we are typically, well, in some cases I've heard on podcasts and even read in certain places, we are called spiritual seekers. I think the concept of peace itself probably is what people would categorize as a truly spiritual endeavor, this oneness of humanity, this oneness of relationships, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I learned that about the peacemaker, that's the place really that got my attention, is I began to relate to that.
And so what's your song? What's the peacemaker song?
Oh, Peace Train.
Peace Train.
Yeah, Cat Stevens. That's a good one.
What's the one? All I want is to have peace of mind.
Oh, that's Boston.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Listen, that's another of our sacred text is all classic rock.
Exactly.
So if you're young, you may not get some of these, but we love classic rock.
Yeah. So that being the case, that's what I am. And for those that met Danae originally, I bet it wasn't too hard for you to guess, if you know anything about the Enneagram at all, that Danae's number is 7. So why don't you talk just a little bit about the 30,000-foot overview of what a 7 is?
Well, I would love to talk about a 7, but let me think about song first. I would have to say, joy to the world.
That's a good one.
I'm not much of a singer, but I did love me some Three Dog Night. That was the very first concert I ever went to.
Back to the 70s.
Yes, I was 13. Don't do the math, please.
Yep.
Anyway, yes, I am a 7, and we are often referred to as the enthusiast. And typically we are extroverted, very optimistic, playful, high-spirited, practical, all these wonderful terms that when I first read the Enneagram book, and I'll talk about that in a minute, I was like, well, this is just wonderful. Absolutely. And I just focused right on the positive things and said, great. Yes. I like new experiences. And then it was like, we can become easily distracted and exhausted by staying on the go. And I was like, okay, yeah, I know. I tend to be not hyper-focused at times, or at least I used to be that way. But I think what I love is that we really do look for the positive. We do look for joy in the situation. And we do have that, it's a blessing and a curse. It's not a denial system, but it is trying to find the silver lining in situations.
Yeah, and it's that energy. So as a 9, one of the things that appeals to me is alone time, and I like to have time to process my thinking, which means that I'm typically going to be out back somewhere, working in our 5.5 acres somewhere, just so I can have that alone time and I can be thinking and that kind of thing. Yet at the same time, because I'm married to you, a 7.
Yes.
I get to go to parties.
Yes.
Now, as a 9.
Get to, he says. Isn't that sweet?
No, in most cases.
Okay.
In most cases, I really do want to go to the parties because they involve friends, and most of all, they're our family members. And what's great about it is you're the person who takes the initiative and you're the person who sets the party up. And I'm the one who gets to go enjoy the party.
Yeah, but here's what I found. Well, back in the early day, it was like, why do you just like to go to the same restaurant? And do you remember? And I was like,
sure.
But we've already gone to that one. Don't you want to try another one?
Right.
And that is a very 7 thing. We want to experience all the things.
Yeah.
And 9s love knowing what they're going to go and get, that it's going to be great every time.
Yeah. Well, that's where our peace of mind comes from.
Exactly.
I know what I'm going to get each and every time. So for me, when you say, hey, why don't we go try another restaurant? Like you'll say something like, I passed this restaurant.
Yeah.
That for you is enough. It's not, hey, I Googled a restaurant. I saw the reviews. Pretty. Exactly.
It was bright and shiny.
Hey, let's go there. And I'm thinking to myself, what if it's terrible?
And I'm like, well, then we'll know. We won't go back.
Well, but see, as a 9, and we're not going to get into all of this. I know you've got plenty of time to start drilling down to the different aspects of these numbers. But one of the things about my number is that we're real into food. I mean, that's one of the things. See, that's important to me. So just
well, FYI, so am I, and so
yeah.
But I will have to say, in your defense, when we started looking more at this, and I was like, okay, I kind of get it. It brings you peace knowing where you're going to go. I may like to go to all the different restaurants or try all the things. But you said, what was it you said?
When I find something I like, I stick with it. And you should remember that.
So we just had our 21st anniversary last week. So
we sure did.
Yeah, it's working so far.
That's right. It absolutely does. But one of the things that as a first podcast, I think might be helpful as well is there are so many Enneagram podcasts out there now. And
right.
Frankly, I'm excited about that because as someone who is really interested in all models and paradigms that have to do with consciousness and relationships, it's exciting to me to see that there are so many people that know about the Enneagram, so many people that are talking about the Enneagram. But the other side of that is, what made you decide to do your podcast?
Right, when there's so many great opportunities to listen out there. Well, I give you one guess why I wanted to start this. Because I'm a 7 and I thought it would be fun.
There we go.
So why did you want to jump on board with me?
Well, I think if people are having fun, there's a very high likelihood that peace can come as a result of it.
Of course.
Usually when we're laughing together and having fun together, not taking ourselves so seriously in this world, it leads to situations that are much easier for us to have and enjoy peace in our lives.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And the other thing is, look, you and I have made such use of it ourselves. It just made perfect sense to me that you would share with all the people out there all the things that you've shared with me the last 10 years.
Well, and this goes back to the thing that we have said for 20 years. In anything we teach, anything we learn, including all these other maps and paradigms and thought consciousness books and things like that, if it doesn't matter in our relationships, it doesn't really matter at all, right?
Exactly. And it's not so much wanting to find out how I could know what somebody else was thinking or use it in some way to be able to categorize and label people. I know you talked at great length about that, and you're going to talk at great length about that in your upcoming podcast. The number one thing for me was, first and foremost, as I began to read about my perspective, which that's what I consider 9 as just a one of 9 perspectives that people tend to have in life. When I began to read about my perspectives and my natural or my nature self, it was amazing to me. It was like, again, someone was reading my soul. They were telling all about the things that had always been in my head, and sometimes people understood and sometimes people didn't understand. And so when I began to think about that, and then to understand from your point of view how that enhances our relationship, just starting with our marriage, if, again, you're seeing things a certain way and I don't understand that, I could do things that could either cause pain on your part, or you might even think I didn't care or respect something. And it was the furthest thing from my mind. It was that I just didn't understand where your perspective was coming from. So relationship is why we have pursued anything. That's the core value that's important to us.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And it's like going into a foreign country where you don't speak the language and you're trying to communicate and do the best you can and explain what it is you need or you want, or you're wanting to go discover on a trail or something, which that's a whole other story. We've ended up some very interesting hiking trails because they did not clearly state what was going on.
That's a great story, by the way. I didn't know you were going to bring that one up.
I just thought about it.
It just reminded me. I know what story you're talking about. It's when we were in the Carolinas.
Yes.
And we were on a hike, and we'll just say it real quickly. We were on a hike, and we found a trail, and we started going up it. And then pretty soon we were I think at one point we were on all fours. And it wasn't that we were hiking up, but we were literally on our hands and knees climbing. And I got scared because it was getting slippery. And I would look back and I was like, oh my gosh, we're climbing up a cliff. And so
I don't want a free solo.
Right, exactly. So we eased our way down on our backs. We eased our way back down and got back to the bed and breakfast up in the mountains where we were staying, and they asked us where we went, and we told them where we went and the problem with the trail and what did they tell us?
Oh my gosh, the lady at the front desk, she was like, oh, no, you shouldn't have gone on that. That is a training course.
It's a training course.
We were like, well, you might have wanted to put a sign up.
A sign
that said that.
Yeah, that would have been helpful.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If there's not a clear way to communicate what you're trying to do, then you get into trouble like that. But this is like learning. I want to know your language, and you want to know mine. We want to know what the kids, not so we can control them, or try to figure them out and label them, but so we can know how to communicate, right?
Absolutely. Communication is the key to life in all things. And so many times, again, when you're working through some type of misunderstanding, when you're working through a conflict, and you're really talking back and forth in any relationship, whether it's spouse or child or any friend, etc., eventually people are going to be saying things like, well, I didn't know you felt that way about it.
Right.
And that's the whole point.
Or you say something and you misunderstand. It's like, that's the furthest thing from what I was trying to say.
Exactly.
So those are the examples. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's interesting how you not only came up with that and whatever, but more than that, I feel like you have used a shameless marketing tool to get people to listen to your first podcast, because you labeled this "What I Learned in the Backseat of a Car" or Cadillac or something, in the backseat of a Cadillac. And I think that is just like what television shows are doing. They're using these shameless techniques to sell their products. Why don't you talk a little bit about what in the world you meant when you titled this initial podcast that?
See, shameless, brilliant. I don't know. It's just whatever.
As long as it works.
So this is a true story. We were riding with some friends. We were like on a 10-hour road trip, and we were we needed a big car, so we took your parents' Cadillac. So literally, it's what I discovered in the backseat of a Cadillac. And my friend said, have you ever heard of the Enneagram? I said, no. And this, again, it's been 9 or 10 years ago. And she said, well, I think you're a 7. I was like, well, what does that mean? I had no idea what that even meant and why she would think I was one. She goes, here, just read this part and see what you think. And like I said earlier, I read it. I read the description, and it was honestly like somebody had been peeking in a window and observing my life. But it was just uncanny to me to see the description and understand and realize there's an entire group of people who process life and thinking just like I do. And I will tell you, one of the main things that made me want to dig further was when I and this is really when you get into it a little deeper, but I have always felt so guilty that I don't grieve for long periods of time. I don't feel the depths of painful emotions. And to find out that is a characteristic of this type was so freeing to me, because I was so close to my dad.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were just thick as thieves. And he died very early. He was 61 years old. And I was devastated. And I cried, but not for long. And I knew other people who had lost very important people in their lives. And they just grieved for months and even longer. And I thought, I felt like I was broken. And that it looked to other people like maybe I didn't really love my dad. And I worried about that for so long. So this is something that I'm learning to experience, to get in touch with. 7s have a propensity to just shut out the negative, painful emotions. And on one hand, I love that I don't dwell on painful things. I don't live in the past, but it's helped me to understand that it's okay when things are difficult, when there is pain in my life. It's okay. I don't need to run from it. But that's a growth process.
Yeah, it is. And it's very freeing to know that this is part of a normal perspective if you come from that 7 point of view or from a 9 point of view. You just going through all this right now makes me feel better knowing that people will now realize why you probably won't show up at my funeral. I mean, it's not that she didn't love me. It's just she gets over things quickly. She's probably at the bowling alley.
Oh, yes.
Or
the Mexican restaurant.
More likely the Mexican restaurant.
Right.
No, so let me ask you this. So you did not find the Enneagram threatening to you at all when you first got into it? You found it exciting?
It was very exciting.
Eye-opening? Yeah.
It was. And I know I talk, kind of silly about, and I'm being real light, and it might sound a little shallow about being 7. 7s are very emotional people at times. But when I read the overview and even some of the paragraphs, like I said, it was a 10-hour trip, and I kind of kept reading. I was just absolutely blown away. And I said it earlier, but it was so freeing.
Yeah.
It was freeing to me, and it made me want to just dig deeper.
Yeah.
And that I have.
Yeah. And so it was a very positive, again, which is the whole point of this. It's a very positive outcome. And it's not something, like you said, that you're using to try to label people. I know there's a pushback by a lot of people on that. We can probably talk about that more in other podcasts. There are some people that absolutely, and rightly so, don't like to be labeled. That's how discriminatory thinking can happen. But there's a big difference between understanding that you have a certain perspective and an outlook in life rather than saying that you're just putting somebody in a box. Because the more you look at the Enneagram, this is what I'm finding out. There's a lot I still have to learn that I have not gone completely through, but you're taking me through. The way I'm learning all the different aspects of my particular 9-ness, I realize that it's an extremely complex. The human beings are complex.
Right. And it never ends. Our evolution is till the day we're not breathing anymore. And then who knows what's on the other side.
Right.
And absolutely not. If you take this understanding just to label somebody or to use it in a power or control mechanism, then really you've misused it.
Right.
If this is not a tool of empathy, then this is nothing. This is nothing more than a party game where you get to go around and guess everybody's number.
Right.
And
exactly.
And then nobody needs an additional label.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So a couple of weeks ago, let me go back a little bit. I completed a 40-hour training course that I have a certificate for. I'm so proud of, but it was to become certified to, teach and talk about the Enneagram from a, I have to say it, I'm supposed to say I'm an Enneagram professional. That still feels funny saying, but what you just said, you have more to learn. I have more to learn. Even my teachers, who are just the most wonderful teachers of this process, will always say there's always more to learn. There's always more to learn. So I'm on this journey year on this journey, and the group of people that I went through this class with, I asked a lot of them, could they just do me a favor and tell me what it is they love about their number, which is a different way to think about it. Nobody really is real comfortable with saying, oh, well, this is what I love about me, or this is what I love about my personality. And so what we tend to do is become apologetic. I know I'm a 7, I'm scatterbrained. And that way we feel like we're not bragging, but we end up not being able to be our true selves. And I love this quote by John Lennon, who I have, again, the Beatles, but he said, we need to learn to love ourselves first in all our glory and our imperfections. If we cannot love ourselves, we cannot fully open to our ability to love others. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's why this is called Love Thy Number.
That's great. That's good. I like that one.
And so this week's quote, and this is what I want to do. I want to end each of our episodes with a quote from the people that I've asked this question to. And I didn't just do it in the class. There were 24 of us in class. And so I've been asking this on other platforms, on Facebook pages. But this week's quote is from Suzanne. And she said, I'm an Enneagram 1. I love that I am fair. I value being fair over being right. I also love that I have lots of integrity in relationships and life situations. How would it be if we just started each morning thinking about, I love this about the gifts that I've been given with this personality type?
Yeah, great thank you statements.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing of you talked about years and years ago, as your feet hit the floor, thank you. Mm-hmm. It gets you in that mode of starting with a thank you statement, and that is that I am in my essence a beautiful, perfect being, and that as I become more in touch with myself, I am understanding that I am love. Just like in my personal faith, I believe that is a good definition of the Creator. And so as we learn that we ourselves are love, then we get out of the mode that there's something defective about us or flawed, or that we're not really good, or that this famous statement, if people really knew who you were, why, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And you probably had someone that said that to you at some point in time. Yeah, that's right. We all struggle with our imperfections, babe. And you brought that up on this podcast, and we'll talk about it in many cases. But we have to remember that's not who we really are. And what you're going to be bringing out in all these podcasts is the truth about who we really are. And once we understand the truth of who we really are, we will naturally come to love that.
I agree. Thank you. I'm so excited that we've launched this. Thank you all for helping us. And I appreciate any feedback you would love to give us. You can email me at lovethinumber@presence, presence.tv. Presence.tv. Lovethinumber@presence.tv. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. And I hope you get to find out the joy of who you truly are by loving your own number. Bye. See you next week.